Message was so good. I can't add anything to it, but I just want to give you a little tidbits about what the Lord shared with me about finding my joy. See, I can't tell you about your joy, but I can tell you about my joy. The joy that he gave me, as the song says, and the world can't take it away. That's the joy that I'm talking about. And I like to share this. I love this scripture here, James 1:3. It said, knowing this, that the trying of your faith work patient. And anytime you got faith, you got some joy. And anytime you got some patience, you got some joy. Because I tell you, patience is something that will make you find some joy. And I like what Sister Johnson said here, joy of serving. And I like to share a little story with you, and this is actually a true story. Back in 1994, my parents both passed within 3 months of each other. My mother died on September 23rd, and then my daddy died on the 14th of December. And that was sort of hard for me. And I never will forget the Christmas Day. I had some family and friends invite me to their homes. And mind you, I had other siblings. But the fact was, on that particular day, that was a lonely day. I didn't feel no joy on that day. I had two sisters, and they had children. One lived on one side of the town. In her house, they was all joyful. They had a tree that went up to the ceiling. And they had packages all around, their presents all around the tree. But I didn't get a phone call. Didn't invite me over. My mom, my dad gone. Then I got another sister live a little closer to me. Her children came out of town. They're celebrating. I didn't get a phone call. And there was no joy for me. I couldn't find her. And all I could do was weep. And I was saying, Lord, what shall I do? And I made a declaration that day. And I cried. A friend of mine invited me over to her home. And I saw her mom, her husband, and siblings, and all of them. And when I made it to the threshold to go out, I broke down and I started crying. I wept enough that I probably could have washed my hair with the tears that came out of my eyes. But I made a promise to the Lord. This is the last year that I will cry like this. The last year. And I remember the word that was spoken to me. He said, to whom much is given, much is required. And I really didn't understand that day what he really meant by that. But I had three brothers, and my younger brother had a son that was autistic. And my brother and his mother, my grandnephews, they were on drugs. And they would staying in my mother's house during that time. And I would go down there sometimes, and my nephew would be there, and he was like 8 years old. And in the midst of all of this, when I walk in the door, he would say, Warby. And I said, you want some water? And if I gave him a bag of chips, they would snatch it out of his hand. And I got to look at this child like this. And so one day my brother came to, well, can you keep him? And then my mind said, I'm getting ready to go back to school to get my master's. I'm saying that myself. But in a dream, the Lord showed me. My nephew was sitting on the other side. And he told me, he said, turn the air on. And I'm like, why am I having this dream? Long story short, I moved him. Now, mind you, my parents died in 1994. 1995, I had to move my nephew in the home with me. Because I brought him out of a situation that he would have been dead. And I was saying, I can't do this. I got to work. I can't handle him. 9 years old and was not potty trained. 9 years old. How can I find joy in dealing with a child that's 9 years old, that's never been potty trained, that would cover his food when he got ready to eat because they would take his food from him? He would stay up all night long talking, and if you go in the room and he's nodding out, he would wake up. But I took him in because I had to obey God. Not only was I finding my joy, I had to find some joy for him. And in the midst of this here, I got him, and it took, when he would eat again, he would cover that food. And he would take the other hand as he covered, and he said, eat my corn, eat my peas. And he covered it because he was so used to people taking food. How could this child have joy in the midst of this? How could this child have joy and was urinating everything else upon him? And there was nights and nights at times that I didn't get any sleep. How could I find joy? And I'm working an 8-hour shift, sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 16 hours. What was the joy in this? But as the word says here, as he gave me that scripture, the trying of your faith, it works patient. See, I needed some joy because I had lost my parents, and that was pulling on me. Now here I have a child, 9 years old, and I had to take care of him. For weeks, he would stay woke. And finally, he found out that he could rest. He found his joy, that he was in a safe place. And he began to sleep. And he would sleep so he would wake up in the morning. I would give him breakfast. And the little rascal was smart. He'd go and send him to school. He up there eating breakfast at school. And then I get a bill. I said, what I'm getting a bill for? Well, he eat breakfast here. I said, I just fed him at home. But he had found his joy. He found comfort in my home. That was his joy. He would sleep for hours. He'll wake up long enough to eat. I got him in a school. And in the process of school, I found favor with some teachers. He had joy at school. They spoiled him. But during this time, I'm still thinking, how can I get any joy? I didn't know it was joy then that God was trying to give to me. But in the midst of this, I found out that it was a purpose. In order to get joy, there's a purpose and there's a plan. And I found out, I ministered a while back, and I think somebody else, they had that subject, and I was saying, pain has a purpose. It was painful for me to see my nephew with what he had gone through. But it was even more painful for me to have to deal with it. But my pain was nothing compared to what he had gone through. But God taught me in the midst of this. At age 15, I finally got him potty trained. I sit in a chair one night and I said, Lord, how will I do it? He would get so aggravated until he would take his clothes and he would rip them off of him because he couldn't express, he couldn't talk. So he found his joy being there in the comfort of my home because I pray all over my house. I don't have just a certain prayer room. Every room I go in, every bathroom I go in, if you come to my house, you're going to find a Bible. And you're going to find some joy while you in there doing what you need to do. And so I was sitting there. I said, Lord, why is it? The Lord told me, he said, it's his nerves. His nerves had been torn up through all of this that he had to go through. But when he finally found out that he didn't have to cover his food, when he could get in a bed and be asleep and sleep all night, he found some joy. He couldn't express to me the joy that he had found. So when he wouldn't let me kiss him out, get his little jaws and he'd turn his head. But in order for him to tell me about the joy that he had found, he would walk up to me. Come here, baby. He would walk up to me and he would do this. That was his joy. And then sometime he would come up to me and like he lay his head like saying, I'm sorry for the pain that I had caused you. Because it didn't happen overnight for him to get his joy. But in the midst of all of that, I found some joy. The Lord blessed him to live until he was 28 years old. But he found some joy. and I found some joy.